more virtual worlds like people would kind of imagine when they see something like, Passable roaming around in Ready Player One.
Sure. So when we talk about what it's going to take to get to that,
Yeah.
It's a step-by-step process. You guys have kind of pieced together kind of like an operating system for what the metaverse could, to enable the metaverse to come to fruition. I know a bit about it. Like I'm talking like there's the Future Pass and the AI protocol and the Silo protocol, and there's the root network, et cetera. Can you talk about the pillars? And I'm Shara, I don't know if you want to shed some light on how you guys think about the stack, if you will.
Let me say one thing, and then I'm going to hand it to Aaron for this. I'm going to lob Aaron a ball to hit a grand slam with right now. But to add to what he just said about what the metaverse is, I think that there's one other really important button on that, which is that the metaverse is simply the interoperable internet. It's that simple. And digital ownership, which is the big topic and the big linchpin that we're all talking about in Web3, digital ownership is completely immaterial without interoperability. It doesn't matter if you own anything, if you can't take it with you. And so that through line is what makes up everything we're doing underneath the hood of Futureverse. That is critical, because without interoperability, and we don't have it without some of the things that Aaron will now go deep into, without these tools, why does digital ownership even matter?
And do you mean, when you say interoperability, are you saying interoperability within the Futureverse ecosystem or beyond that?
Within everything. So for us, it's not about that. And this is one final little button I'll add, which Aaron and I say ad nauseum, which is there aren't singular metaverses. We aren't building a metaverse. Just like I would never say, Drew, do you want to invest in my internet? You'd be like, it's just the internet. It's just the metaverse. Everyone is contributing it. Interoperability has to be across the board. There's no such come to us. And even as we talk about the root network, which we'll go touch on now, our through line and our focus is not come over and build here only. It's entirely about interoperability. And if that isn't achieved, none of us have jobs.
It's a really interesting point, because if you think about it, the real key difference between a social network and a metaverse, if you will, is like, come to my social network is a real thing. And that is a closed place they will open up for you to then join and participate in. Come to the metaverse is a very nuanced difference, or come to the internet is a very nuanced difference. In that terminology, it's open versus closed. So, okay, so Aaron, let's talk about what is this like, again, especially as I think about it in terms of, as an investor, I want to start to understand, I'm thinking about how do we materialize this vision, and what are the gaps, what are the opportunities? Before we even get into that, let's talk about the foundation and the stack and the infrastructure that is going to enable builders to come and help to realize this vision.
Yeah, I think like Shara hit the nail on the head. Web3 has long sung about the opportunity of the metaverse and Web3 technology powering that, and has focused very much on ownership, because that's what blockchains are kind of good at. They can give you digital ownership. And just like Shara said, it's not very useful owning something that can only be used in one place. And that's really where the metaverse has stopped from a Web3 point of view. And it's one of the reasons why like mainstream, gamers and technologists have said, this is bullshit. Because, sure, we can have your little token and you can fire your token around and it can interact with digital money, but like, what can you do with it? And generally the answer to that is, well, you can use it in this one app. And the minute you say that, and the minute, interoperability doesn't come into it at the content layer, not at the token layer, the kind of idea drops dead. And so what we've been doing is kind of figuring out how to get that very hard problem of content interoperability to actually kind of materialize and become a real thing. And that takes lots of little bits, lots of moving parts in trying to get that to work. And it starts at the data layer. And so we've built a bunch of protocols that are, if you look at the two things that the root network's optimized for, one is onboarding users in a really safe way. in a really simple way. So like getting over that hurdle that stops people getting into Web3, that makes it a simple journey. You know, that's what the Future Pass system, account system, and abstraction system is all about. It's what our Donuts protocol is all about. Then you go from there and you start to kind of jump on that bedrock of identity into the content space. And we've designed a bunch of protocols around that. Namely, you know, the big ones in there are the asset register. So asset register does the first job of interoperability, which is like standardizing the way data is created around content. So if you think about like the world of NFTs out there now, tokens are really good for interacting with each other. They can kind of like, you know, one ERC20 is the same as another ERC20 in the sense that it can transfer between wallets, it can interact with contracts in a repeatable and predictable way. But if you start to stick content on top of that, you know, with an NFT, say ERC721, the token bit is cool, but then everyone writes the metadata differently, and it's located in strange places, and often it's hard to find. I think if OpenSea disappeared, about 60% of the content behind NFTs would disappear. So what the asset register does is provide a set of rules about how you should store data around content and how different types of content connect to each other. And that could be things like, you know, what wearable is allowed to connect to which avatars. In simple terms, structuring the data so that you can kind of enable content interoperability. You kind of jump from there into the kind of other elements that follow the user around on the data layer. Social graph, for example. I want to be able to take my friends with me, you know, and the things that I value are the things that I own and the people that I have to take on that journey with me. And that's what Silo is all about. It's about how do we store the data about the things that we love in a decentralized way, and how do we take our friends with us between these applications. So once you've got that data layer kind of sorted, you move kind of up a step into the content layer. And this is where things get really tricky, because for true interoperability, you've got different devices, you know, whether these are desktops or mobiles or, you know, Vision Pros or Quests or whatever it is. Then you've got different engines. So whether that's Unity or Unreal or other emerging engines, whether it's, you know, native client or whether it's web-based. So you've got all these different kinds of configurations that you can have for content. And in each one of those, there are multiple kinds of settings about how lighting works and shaders work and poly counts work and all this kind of stuff. So you end up with this huge matrix of options for compatibility. And that's where things fall down generally, you know, where 3D content starts to lose its interoperability. And so we've built a whole new pipeline of tools called DOT, family of things underneath that, which help people create interoperable content that automatically right sizes, right scales for the device and the application that they're working on. So you always get the best quality experience. It's super lightweight. It works with things like swappables and wearables in real time and in runtime. And it's connected to the emerging AI content generation tools to make it simple for end users to interact with it. And then the last bit that we're kind of doing is really showing that this stuff works. You know, it's a big vision and it hasn't been done before. And so we've gone and got, you know, some of the world's biggest brands and IP to bring together use cases and examples of how this stuff actually hangs end to end. So developers can both, you know, copy those things and start to build their own experiences in those same ways, but also start to interact with those, you know, big brands and that big content and that big IP and bring their users, you know, richer experiences on top of that stuff as well.
So I know like one of the topics that's come up, it's always, I feel like it's one of the things that you guys were very, I don't know if it's early on, but you were on top of very quickly was AI.
Yeah.
How AI and the blockchain are going to kind of benefit from each other. You know, I'm a huge believer that I think, you know, part of, I was speaking earlier about how, you know, I think the biggest failure of DAOs so far was the lack of AI, the lack of the word autonomous. It was really just distributed organizations. There's no AI component. And my other belief is that every asset in the metaverse needs to be intelligent. Every single asset has the ability to be able to operate and execute on its own. So can we talk about how AI and your vision of the metaverse, and then how that connects to opportunities for people to be able to, bring those types of experiences to life?
Yeah, I mean, ironically, that's how we all met, right? We kind of got into Altered State Machine together. So we were kind of early in a sense. We started thinking and working on the intersection of Web3 and AI around 2019. And we had kind of two tracks then. We were building technology to enable ownership. So how can you own AI agents in the open metaverse? And then we're building technology to bring content to life. So that was in the form of intelligent agents that could do interesting things and generative AI content creation. Over the years, we've built up a really comprehensive stack of capability around that, and one of the best research teams in Web3 working on this. In fact, one of the best research teams full stop working on this space. We've recently published our work around generative music called Gen, and it is the best generative AI model out there now, most comprehensive, highest quality music produced. We have an upcoming paper on our 3D, which the team's been working on for a while now, generating higher quality, faster inference than the majors out there in terms of 3D generation. Underneath those kind of generation layers, we've got this exciting thing, probably the first time we might be talking about it, called the Murmur Matrix. Murmur Matrix is kind of like a middleware layer that does the same kind of thing for AI as we talked about earlier for content with the asset register. And it enables interoperability of different AI models and allows long-term persistent memory and context to exist. So you can jump between different applications, and those different applications can implement the AI model that's specific to their environment or use case. But from a user's perspective, it feels like you're dealing with one super AI. And so this is a very, very cool piece of technology. We're about to release an update white paper to the ASM protocol, which explains how all this stuff works. And then we've got the core ASM protocol, which is about ownership. So linking, Web3 wallets and tokens to AI agents so that users can own them. We've got, I think 9 patents now across this domain of generation, ownership, and interoperability. So very comprehensive offering when it comes to the intersection of Web3 and AI.
I'm thinking, do you have a wall in your house that has a map? A beautiful mind map. Just stare at it, throw something else on it.
It is kind of like that in my mind. I mean, I think people often say there's a lot going on, and that's true. And unfortunately, to make this stuff work, there are a lot of moving pieces, and they have to interact with each other. And that's probably why it's never been done before. There hasn't been an organization that has brought together the expertise across all of these domains and said, hey, solve this comprehensive end-to-end user journey and make it work. And I think, now we have 250 to 300 of the world's best people across these different domains solving these bits in an organized and kind of interoperable way. And it's really exciting to see this stuff to come to life.
So Shara, I know you, I've known you for a while now. You're a force. Tell me your vision of the business relationships and partnerships and, the acquisitions. How are you starting to piece this whole thing together? Because you guys have a bunch of different IP properties. You have a bunch of different partnerships. Tell me a little bit about what are you looking for when you start to think about, the next partnership or the next acquisition, and walk me through where you see that all going.
Yes, I think your point on the map was really interesting, because Aaron and Marco and I work on the maps of the maps of the maps behind the scenes all day, every day. And a lot of people will be like, oh, there's how come Futureverse hasn't explained how all these things interconnect? And it's because we're literally driving a rocket ship as it's flying a gazillion miles an hour, and we're connecting all the dots as soon as they're all ready to be connected. And all the teams are building all the pieces. And we have a big map of a vision that tweaks each day. So if we published one, we'd have to publish one with an update every night. And so in order to do that, we have to have the time to do that. But we are doing all the things that we're doing. Even when Aaron just said 300 people, it's a lot. And it's also not enough because there's so much that we're doing. So the best way to, so anyway, long story short, we will actually be publishing a map soon because we're getting close to all of the pieces being super clear to one audience. And Aaron's point was really, really important. Each piece has 10 branches off of it, and some of those branches are not interesting to all audiences. There's a developer audience that deeply cares about the nuances of some of the interoperability pieces and some of the way that the tech is designed. And then there's a mainstream audience or a Web3 audience, which we all know really well, who is interested in how it affects the ownership side. And so you can't explain one thing to every audience, or you'd need 9 months to do it. And so we have been working and simplifying, and as all these things come out into the world, which they are now rolling out very, very quickly, it will become easier and clearer for us to put out a map that multiple audiences will understand, and we're about to do that. But the simplified answer to your question is the best way to think about how we utilize all of these pieces underneath the hood is that there is the root network at the bottom. There is the Futureverse platform and tools that I don't want to say is on top necessarily because sometimes it's to the side. But then on the very top is the content and application layer. And the way to really understand this simplified form of what we're doing is the Readyverse, which we've now just announced our partnership with Warner Brothers and Ready Player One as one of the first pieces. And I say first because it's just one of a significant number of IP that will be coming into the Readyverse. The Readyverse is our consumer layer. So think about Futureverse as Intel inside. People aren't running all over the place like jumping for joy that they know about Intel. They're not putting Intel stickers on their faces because that's the behind the scenes layer. Futureverse is a B2B business. It's an infrastructure and technology company. The Readyverse, on the other hand, is the brand that consumers will come to know. And that's where all of the big IP will come in and enter, because the Readyverse is our consumer facing metaverse.
Got it.
Open metaverse play.
That helped me understand this a lot more.
The brand will be coming in, and like we announced Ready Player One with Warner Brothers, you can imagine we're talking to all the major studios, and all of their IP will start to come in, and it will be able to exist in a way using all the tech we just discussed, where you can go from a Ready Player One universe into a Harry Potter world, and all of those assets go with you, and the digital ownership finally matters because you can take those things, you can earn rewards through systems like our Future Pass and Future Score and Future Quest system that is underneath, but it'll look like Ready Pass, Ready Score, Ready Quest. So
Got it.
All to be invisible, but IP will start coming into the space, not only with us, but significantly with us, but in the space in general in a way that it's actually usable and interactable. Right now, we've seen how much IP have we seen over the last 3-4 years come in and go nowhere because there's nowhere to literally take it. So it just, all these big studios have dabbled, but there's nothing to do with it. And so that's where the Readyverse will become our what to do with it play.
Okay. So two questions here. One, I would say is like, where are we in terms of timeline and maturity and readiness for applications and builders to deploy and to create usable experiences on top of the infrastructure? Let me start there, and then I got one more.
Yeah, I think now we're really at the point where we're starting to ramp in that. We've always kind of talked about these 3 phases of platform rollout, and typically, any platform business follows this model. Drink your own champagne, build stuff yourself, like test and prove that it works. We've been doing that over the last kind of year to 18 months. Getting to the end of that phase now. Phase 2 is work with partners, get them, these kind of closer partners with some expertise and some experience in the domain, get them to build on top of your tools and prove that someone else can do it. We're in that phase now. We've got a number of like different studios and brand partners and agencies out there using our tools to bring some exciting content to life, which we'll talk about shortly. And then last phase is kind of that kind of general developer ecosystem. And now we're really in the onboarding phase of that general developer ecosystem, hence why we're on here today talking to your audience and people who are builders, and so like Shara mentioned, we'll have opportunities for people to build their own standalone experiences and applications and content, but connect that to this world of other stuff that we've been building and our partners have been building, and kind of get that idea that people are talking about interoperability actually work.
Yeah, so that perfectly lends itself to my last question. So as an investment firm and an accelerator, we want to find the gaps that we think will be the biggest springboards for the ecosystem in general. Where do you see the biggest needs? Or because you guys have a big team, you're working on a lot of stuff under the hood. So when you think, but like there's no ecosystem. Apple could build as much as they want, but the App Store opening up to a million different applications to enter into their ecosystem is what makes Apple's App Store and the whole experience great. What are the things that you think are the, I don't want to say killer apps, but like the things that you think in the early days are going to be really pillars of early adoption that you'd love to see built, accelerated, invested in, etc.?
You know what the exciting thing is? No one fucking knows. That's I was there when the App Store launched it. I worked in Vodafone and one of the biggest mobile telecommunications companies in the world, and no one knew. And what we're trying to do is provide the platform that enables users to build interesting apps, which is what Apple did with iOS and the iPhone, and a place for people to discover them, which is what the Rediverse is all about. And we're trying to solve those two problems. If you're building something that's interesting, that's in that kind of consumer content space, gaming space, GameFi, all of that kind of stuff, and you think you've got the next big thing, come and talk to us, because we just don't know.
So is it like, I guess as I think about it though, are you guys looking for people that are building more on the social fi, and is social?
Yes. I said, if you're the metaverse is about immersive convergence. So if you're building social, if you're building gaming, if you're building commerce, if you're building media, all of those things are the customer experience layer of the digital economy. And whatever goes underneath that could be banking, could be finance, could be retail, could be payments. We think that those things are all part of the same thing now. And if you're building something in immersive convergence, that's who we want to talk to.
That's fantastic. Well, guys, I'm really excited to enter into this relationship with you guys and start to dig deeper into the ecosystem and really drive more awareness and education and put together the pieces so that people understand, what is really what they have available to them to stand on. Like, the standing on the shoulder of giants. Like, you guys have laid a foundation so people can stand on your shoulders. And I think the more people understand what's there and how high they can see and how high they can reach with you guys kind of propping them up, I think there's going to be a lot of interest from builders to come in and really kind of make this vision a reality. So I'm really excited to dig in. We'll have a lot more information as we kind of dig in and really start to think through, where else do we want to see companies? What kind of groups and communities do we want to reach out to and engage about building in this ecosystem? But we'll have more information about the accelerator soon. If you guys are interested, you can come immediately and just go to the Denarii Labs website, apply for the cohort. We have people looking at every application that comes in, and then we'll share more information as we have it about what we're looking for and what we're excited about.
Cool. Thanks, Drew, for having us on.
Shara, thanks so much.
Of course.